Hey, this is Matt O'Leary, and spring, it's over. That means it's time for Albums at a Glance. This is where I go over a number of new released albums, usually from the last month, but this time I'm doing the whole season of spring, so really from the last 2 months. And these are more notable, kind of better known releases, at least within the alternative music world. So with that, let's get it going. We'll start with a band that I'm actually new to, but I'm really intrigued by. It's the electronic Swedish band Little Dragon with their 5th album, Season High. There's just this real mystique about Yakumi's voice that has me hanging on her every word. I feel like that's especially the case on the song Butterflies or The Pop Life. I'm also drawn in by some trip hop and down-tempo elements that I'm not as familiar with, but maybe this will be the entry point into bands like Massive Attack or Portishead. I don't think this album actually adds up to be more than the sum of its parts, but I do think it's extremely well balanced. You got your club-ready tracks like Sweet and Push, and then you got your more experimental meanderings like Gravity or Butterflies. I don't really care for the song Don't Cry. I feel like it's really, really strong, almost a rip-off of Lana Del Rey. So I just kind of skipped that one. Mr. Toro y Moi, aka Chaz Bundick, collaborated with the jazz duo the Mattson 2 on an album called Star Stuff. The title track speaks of just being overwhelmed by the world and sort of retreating into yourself, into your shell. It's easily the most catchy and sticky hook. Once again, I feel like there's a great balance across the track list, and this is extremely well performed, well produced, just a great effort overall. The band Incubus has a new album called 8, and a lot of critics just absolutely blasted them for their last album, If Not Now When? And honestly, I just don't get it. Yeah, they're not the daring youngsters they were on Science, and Morning View was probably their peak. But If Not Now When had some fantastic songs that were 100 times more original and more intricate than anything on 8. Honestly, this music kind of sounds like the stuff I'd hear at youth group in church growing up, like a Reliant K, but probably without the witty lyrics. And Brandon Boyd, he sings all these cliches like bent but not broken and coming out of hibernation and shed my skin, and he has so much conviction with it that he almost makes it work, but no. I'm still a big Incubus fan. I really love some of their early albums. I love their last album, but this one didn't do it for me. Next up is Alex G, who has written so many songs. It's kind of pointless to say actually how many albums he's released because he's so prolific, and I feel like he just has random recordings sort of just out there in the ether everywhere. And this new album, Rocket, follows up one of my favorites from him, Beach Music, with its dense acoustic textures and his usual lo-fi charm. And Rocket wanders like a lot. In one moment on Bobby, he's doing this folk Americana sound, and in the next on Brick, he's doing intense, experimental, industrial beats. The song that shocked me most was Sports Star with its odd mix of trendy auto-tune and these elegant piano swells. I'm still waiting for Alex G to drop a more cohesive front-to-back listen, but he does take a lot of risks on Rocket. For the most part, I think they go over pretty well. There's even this song, and I'm not sure which one it is, but it's got this like kind of sounds like Mr. Burns as the alien in The Simpsons. One of my first album reviews on this channel was a band called Pond and their 2015 release, Man, It Feels Like Space Again. And now it's The Weather, which definitely follows that Tame Impala trend. And Kevin Parker actually produced it, so you can expect those blissful disco beats and pristine bass lines. And songs like Colder Than Ice or All I Want for Christmas bring some Ariel Pink-esque glam rock. But ultimately, I did end up feeling like the songwriting here paled in comparison to their last 4 albums and currents. The band seems to opt for absurdity over interesting composition, like on the song A.B., where Nick Albrook's vocal lines are just sort of an unintelligible drone with no discernible melody or structure. It's genuinely hard to believe that some of this is an improv. Some of the themes, though, of end times or nuclear war are amplified by just the intensity of the music, especially on the song 30,000 Megatons. But for me, this nihilistic, this kind of species loathing stuff is really all too common in music today. Next up is the garage punk band White Reaper with their third album. They decided to go with the self-aggrandizing title, The World's Best American Band. And like the last one, I feel like my excitement toward the beginning of the album just slowly, just gradually kind of fades away as the album goes on. As far as their just pure surface level sound, I don't feel like many bands do the stadium rock thing quite as well. Tony on the vocals is killing it. He's got so much swagger. He's got this flashy, almost guitar-like distorted tone. And the guitars are always so massive, but unfortunately I never find more than just a song or two on each album that really grips me. I feel like Judy French is an obvious home run. Along with the first track, I really love that one. Otherwise, I feel like it all kind of blends together. The drummer for one of my favorite bands, Dr. Dog, his name's Eric Slick, came out with his debut solo record, Palisades, last month. There's a good balance of hook-driven, concise songs like the garage rocker You Became the Light or You Are Not Your Mind, along with some more meditative, lengthier cuts like Palisades or Slow Burn or my favorite Evergreen. Interestingly, I feel like every song is really well constructed here. I don't think there's one single dud. The production, though, is a little bit muddy. I don't feel like this is going to really excite anyone on first listen just because it lacks that initial sparkle. But if you keep working at it, I promise it's an excellent, excellent album. Mr. John Mayer's back from his little country stint. Pretty underwhelming if you ask me, but this time it's a lot catchier, it's a lot more dynamic with the search for everything. Some of that backwoods, horseback, home cooking, good old country sound still around in songs like Roll It On Home, or In the Blood, where he's really asking if he can ever escape the fate of his family line, whether he can ever rise above his own cruel nature. My top moments are the absolutely blissful chord changes on the chorus of Emoji of a Wave or the bridge of Moving On and Getting Over. For as, self-obsessed that John comes off in the public eye, in interviews, he's still the whole package musically. I feel like this is best since Continuum. Next up, we got indie poppers Sylvan Esso with their sophomore effort, What Now? I think this music works pretty well in an H&M, but outside the mall, the bleep bloops and the big bass and Amelia's twangy voice are pretty catchy, but I just can't seem to puncture the surface of this album. Nothing about this music challenges or surprises or inspires me, but luckily there's Mac DeMarco with his new album, This Old Dog, another set of low-key slacker pop tunes. This one's a little more acoustically oriented with more of an emphasis on the sincere lyrics about Mac's family and his relationship with his dad specifically. I don't really have much to say about it. I feel like I like Mac, and he does what he does really well. And this is just a continuation of that. Next up is Slowdive's self-titled comeback album. Have listened to, I think it's called Souvlaki a couple times. I've really only heard that album. I think it's their most popular. But that one, even though the songs aren't that memorable, I feel like it has such a clear aesthetic. It really defines that 90s dream pop and shoegaze sound, and such a clear identity that worked just really well at the time. The new self-titled album, I don't feel like it has either of those two elements. The songs aren't there for me, and the sound isn't what it once was, in my opinion. Which, makes this kind of a chore. If you're not into this album like me, but do want some of that dreamy indie rock, something in this vein, I would go for Pink Shiny Ultra Blast, I would go for the Besnard Lakes, or Minor Victories album from last year. Go check those guys out. Tara James O'Neill's been in the industry for a long time, but now, 2017, it's time for a self-titled album. Sometimes that can represent sort of an arrival point for a band where they finally reach the sound that they set out to create. Other times it's more of a reinvention, which I feel is more the case in this album. Tara's style is pretty mercurial, it's always shifting and changing, and on this one the subdued instrumental palette of foggy percussion and lilting lap steel kind of opens the door for more of a thematic exploration. But to me, this album doesn't have quite enough of a unique character to demand my undivided attention. Instead, it's one that can pleasantly accompany more of a moment of reflection. I actually listened to this on the way back from vacation with some really good friends to the Pacific Northwest. pretty recently. So we went to Seattle and then we drove out to the coast. So this, this album, even though on its own I don't think it would be that special, it is special to me because it kind of frames that experience. And whenever I go back to it, it's just going to bring back all those really good memories. So, music's amazing that way, how it can kind of just, it has this mysterious command over memory. Alright, that's it for me for this time, but I'm really excited about the summer. Lots of good albums coming up. Let me know which ones you're excited about, and thank you so much for watching.